Welcome to the first of a four-part series hosted by Diversified around the topic of learning how to deliver value through IT while complying with the VA modernization plan. The new mandate that's out there, we want to make sure that we're putting the opportunity out there to learn about the tools available to both comply and to grow. Over the course of the next several weeks, we'll be hosting these Thursday afternoon series. We'll have guests like today from NetBrain, Cisco, and Rubrik in the future. So without further ado, we'll jump right in here and get going. Today, we have a group of panelists here. First, from NetBrain, we have Rick Late, Senior Account Executive. And Rick has been involved in the tech industry for over 25 years as an account executive and as a systems engineer administrator. In addition to the VA, Rick does cover the Department of Energy and Department of Labor, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, amongst many others. We also have with us, who'll be giving us a demo of the NetBrain system itself, is Joel Byam. Joel is a network engineer with 7 years of pre-sales engineering experience. Joel has been with NetBrain for about 3 years and focuses in the route switch, wireless, and network consultation arena. Additionally, Zach Duncan here, IT subject matter expert from Diversified. Zach has been a part of the team and brings with him a wealth of knowledge in delivering solutions that provide the business value technical capabilities within the enterprise and government space. And I'll be your moderator for today. My name is Nathan Jones. I'm the Director of Sales for the Intelligent Technology Solutions Division of Diversified. Today, what we're going to do in terms of an agenda, we're going to spend some time looking at Diversified, an overview of the company and the benefits of automation. That'll be presented by Zach Duncan. And then Rick Late will give us an overview of the NetBrain solution, how it works, and the benefits associated with that. And then we'll end or climax the call, I'll say, with a demonstration of the NetBrain tool and to give you an idea of the capabilities that exist within that. Joel will walk us through that. We will have a Q&A session at the end. By nature, with multiple people on the call and handing off to different presenters. Attendees of today's session are on mute. However, you do have the ability to submit questions as we go, and encourage that. Part of moderating that today, I'll be monitoring the questions as we go. We'll stop several times throughout the presentation and give the opportunity to answer questions about the particular sections that we're going through. And when you're doing that, when you're submitting questions, I ask that you please make sure to submit the questions to all of the panelists. There are several options to do it privately and otherwise. The panelists that may be speaking at the moment, sending them a private message, I won't be able to see that, and they may not be watching. So please do submit those to all panelists, and we'll answer those as we go. So before I jump in, if there's any questions about the agenda and what we're going through today, please feel free to go ahead and throw those out there. With none, I'll pass the mic over to Zach to talk a little bit about Diversified and its capabilities as a company.
Hey, thanks, Nathan, and thanks everyone for joining us today from wherever you're logged in at watching this, and thank you, NetBrain, for joining us to do the demo. I'm going to do a real quick Diversified overview, and then we're going to pass it to NetBrain and jump straight into the actual demo, which we think is the coolest part of this webinar and what you came to see, hopefully. So Diversified overview. We were founded in 1993. Very large AV integrator, over 1,500 employees now, $750 million in revenue. But as things become more and more IP-based, we realized that we needed to care about the network infrastructure as well, because a lot of this network infrastructure is running the endpoints, the advanced visual environments that we work on. So we don't just want to be known as an AV integrator, we want to be known as a total technology solutions provider. Some of the things that stand out about Diversified 3 network operation centers, one in Atlanta, one in New Jersey, and one out on the West Coast. Our managed services division and global services division monitors over 300,000 endpoints. We have 33 offices across the U.S., 32 in the U.S., excuse me, 1 in South Korea. We're looking to expand internationally in the next few years. And our customer sat rating is pretty high. And you can know how hard that can be when you're doing IT installation and AV and all that. You go ahead and jump to the next one, Nathan. This is just a quick slide to show the area of the country where we can support you with our engineering and, account teams. I'm not going to point out every city, but you can see the breadth of reach we have across the U.S. right there. You can look at some of our certifications that make us stand out. I'm not going to read these again, but if you're familiar with these, they're relevant and they're across the board. We can deliver not only the hardware, but we can deliver the after the sale, managed service support installation. I think that's what sets us apart from some of the rest of the competitors in this industry. All right, now this slide, this speaks to the business units within Diversified. So we have a one hand to shake philosophy. One of my team members at Diversified, Stephen Jenkins, likes to say that we can do everything except put the nails in the walls. And if you asked us to, we could probably do that as well. So, some of the divisions that stand out on an IT-based webinar, structured cabling, advanced visual environments, the Federal Solutions Group, which I'm a part of, and the Intelligent Technology Solutions Group as well. So we hit on all that, and those are the ones that are really relevant to the people on this webinar. But if you look across the rest of it, we have a ton of great groups that can help you with everything within your enterprise. This is a big one, especially when it's being targeted at the VA. We know that some people on this call may not be a federal end user, and we don't want to, set you off to the side, but this was targeted to the VA modernization effort. And we understand in the federal government that, the contracting rules and procurement and how to deal with that, and especially as it relates to small business. So the reason we're highlighting C6I Services is because within the VA, they have a large goal to go through as many service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses as possible. So we have the ability to partner with that and help the VA meet the procurement needs and the mandates set out by the Small Business Administration. All right, now this slide is actually taken straight from the VA modernization plan, which I think rolls through 2025, as you can see here. And if you look over on the right-hand side of future state, that is where we're trying to get you to. Whether you be in the VA or an enterprise, small business, whatever, I think these goals translate across not just federal, but enterprise, commercial, private sector customers. And some of the ones we really want to hit on today are the efficient, dynamic, service-oriented infrastructure, the ITEL framework. NetBrain will help you accomplish that. Standardized, shareable knowledge, you can see that, and the robust lifecycle IT infrastructure. NetBrain is going to hit on all that. And the reason I have automation standing out over here in this little blurb with the notes that I have is NetBrain and I have gone and done a lot of consultations and demos and helped many customers. And a lot of times we will get the question when we start talking about automation, people are worried about, well, this is going to take my job. What am I going to do? I've been the person that is logging in via CLI to all this network infrastructure. I'm the subject matter expert. I troubleshoot. I do the change management. I load the new iOS. I push out all the configs. If NetBrain does all this, what am I going to do? So I wanted to make a little analogy back to a company that you've probably heard of, VMware. In the late 90s, early 2000s, VMware came out and they were virtualizing the server. So they would go to server administrators and be like, look, we're going to reduce the footprint of your physical server, make it easier to manage, and we'll do all this with our software-based platform. So a lot of times I would think server admins push back, but if you look now, where is VMware at now? Server virtualization is old school, and if you're not doing it, you're behind the curve. I would say the same thing is true with automation. And I read this quote the other day. It says, IT automation will not replace the human element needed in IT, but those who use it will replace those who don't. So, you know, you can look at companies like Cisco coming out with the Catalyst 9300s and the software-defined access and the automation and programmability they provide there, or Rubrik, like we'll discuss next week. Automation and orchestration. AWS, you can automate, orchestrate almost your entire workload up into AWS. Ansible, Chef, Puppet, stuff like that. It is all automation. Automation is not going anywhere. So we really want to highlight that and let you know that NetBrain is going to help you on that journey.
Okay, thanks, Zach. And we'll pause at this point if there's any questions about Diversified and our background and what services can be offered through that, or questions about what Zach has covered in general. Having none, we'll move on to the next piece of our presentation. This will be presented by Mr. Rick Late. So Rick, you want to take it from here?
Yes, Nathan, thank you very much. And thank you to you and Lisa and Brooke and Zach for putting this together. We're very excited to work with the folks at Diversified. But like Zach, I'm going to keep my remarks short. I think most people that are attending today's webinar want to see the software in action. At least that's what we hope. So I'm going to just give you a little bit of brief background about what NetBrain is all about before I turn it over to one of our senior engineers, Joel Byam. So as Zach points out, we are an adaptive automation tool. That's what NetBrain is referred to as. We create dynamic network maps automatically, which can be used for troubleshooting, documentation, change management purposes, and a host of other reasons. But those are the three primary reasons why people will use NetBrain. It is an automation tool. As you can see here, we've been in business since 2004. We are a very profitable company. We just had by far our best year and our best quarter. We are located in Burlington, Massachusetts, about 20 miles west of Boston, but we also have offices, a couple of offices in the United States, and I believe there's one in the UK now, there's one in Germany, and there is one, we're just opening one in Toronto, Canada as well. We've been getting our fair share of awards. We're a cool vendor on Gartner's list again for I think the third time, something along those lines. People are definitely starting to take notice about who we are. In terms of our sample customers, I am on the federal team. I'm part of the federal group. We've been an entity here at NetBrain for a little over 2 years, and we've made great progress in the federal space. The DOE, we are currently in Los Alamos. We're in Argonne, Savannah River, Oak Ridge, Y12, and the list is getting bigger all the time. We're also in all four branches of the United States military, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, NASA, the Pentagon, the Department of Justice, and the list goes on. And as you can see at the bottom of this slide, we are in over a third now of Fortune 100 companies in the enterprise arena as well. So what we say around here is everything starts with a map. It's a three-tiered process in terms of NetBrain automation. The first step is to build the map itself, to visualize what your network is. We can go out and find up to 3,000 devices in an hour in our initial discovery. And Joel's going to walk you through just how powerful these maps are. They are dynamic maps. It's not flat data. There's actually, you can drill down into the map itself and get just a ton of good data from the different maps that are created. So we will first visualize what your network is all about. Then we automate. We automate a variety of tasks. Once again, something Joel's going to show you. But we have something called QApps and runbooks, which will help automate your daily tasks to make your engineers' time a lot more efficient. And finally, it's our ability to integrate with any workflow. Our RESTful API connector allows us to integrate with a host of third-party applications, things like SolarWinds. That comes up all the time. People think we're in competition with SolarWinds, when in fact we do very different things. and we can take SolarWinds data and include it as the data on our maps. Other applications that we commonly integrate with would be like Splunk, ServiceNow, Remedy, and the list goes on. So again, the first step is always to visualize the data in its proper context. Joel, one of the things Joel is going to show you is the way that we can help you troubleshoot network issues, I should say, with what we call an A to B path. The dynamic aspect of our map gives a ton of data that is usually very difficult to find in other methods, and the dashboard, which give you good summary, single pane of glass type summarization of where your network is at any given time. And then again, as I mentioned, we give you the ability to automate daily tasks and workflows. We have something called QApps, which stand for Quick Applications, and Runbooks, which are a series of functionalities that you can incorporate into a runbook so that you can automate tasks, things that you're doing every day, or maybe that you only need to do on occasion. But this is a way to streamline and expedite these types of tasks to make your network team a lot more efficient. And then, as I said, the ability to integrate with existing workflows, application performance management, cybersecurity, obviously a huge concern and consideration for all entities right now, given the amount of cyber threats out there. Design engineering and change management. Change management is the only option that we have for our software. It tends to be very streamlined, the quotes, but we do have a really powerful change management tool. The way, in terms of network troubleshooting and escalation, I used to be a network administrator and a systems administrator. This is an extremely powerful tool for helping you isolate where problems are with the network. People will come in and say, hey, something's not functioning properly, what's going on? And as anybody who works in this industry knows, the network is always guilty until proven innocent. And NetBrain is a great tool to allow you to either isolate where the problem is in your network or to say, no, it's not the network, there's something else going on. And then the bottom one is network documentation. Anybody who's done a Visio diagram of any kind knows how painstaking that process can be. And depending upon the size of your network, you can often, by the time you've gathered all the data, built the Visio to its finished form, the data is already obsolete. One of the things Joel is going to show you is just how quickly you can build a map and export it into the Visio format literally within minutes. So this is just something that we like to show to people. Obviously, we're here today to talk about network refresh, upgrading an IT infrastructure, network infrastructure, but there are a lot of different reasons why people are using NetBrain. Accurate documentation, as I said, automating the manual tasks. It's a great tool to help you with audit and compliance regulations, cyber defense, as I mentioned, and troubleshooting. Troubleshooting, to me, it's one of the most underrated aspects of the tool that we bring to the table. It's a wonderful troubleshooting tool, and I think you're going to see that in just a couple of minutes. And then the data center migration, network refreshes, et cetera. No, that's fine, Nathan. Thank you. And then one of the primary reason we're here talking today is about network refreshes. If anybody's had the opportunity to look at the Department of Veterans Affairs Comprehensive Information Technology Plan, one of the overriding and repeated sentiments in that report is that the VA's network as a whole is outdated and needs to be replaced. And if you're going to tackle a network refresh project, the amount of tools that we can help bring to the table in terms of getting a really accurate snapshot of a detailed snapshot of what your current network is all about, the equipment that's out there, how old it is, what needs to be replaced, et cetera, and then helping you through the process itself. Network can just bring so much to the table, and I think you're going to see what I'm talking about in just a minute. So really, that's the end of mine. I want to turn it over to Joel now and give him the opportunity to show you what this tool is all about. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Yeah, before as I'm passing this over to Joel, are there any questions? We'll open up the mic here. If not, I'm passing this over to Joel, and he's going to bring us through a demonstration of the product itself.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and you folks go ahead and let me know when you can see that come in clearly.
I can, Joel.
All right, great. Well, once again, thank you for taking some time to look at NetBrain and how it can be able to help with making network refreshes, upgrades, general mapping, and analysis a much easier process within your organization. Now, generally, NetBrain likes to sit under three primary funnels: mapping and documentation, incorporated with discovery, being able to automate many of the manual processes you take within your day-to-day, and of course, be able to integrate with your existing applications, so that way any previous investments don't have to be completely thrown away. Now, of course, all that information can be shared between each other using a RESTful API. But again, before we even jump into all of that, as Rick mentioned, everything starts with a map. Now, to be able to create a map within NetBrain, we simply need to be able to discover the environment. Now, we can be able to create customized domains that can logically segment data, where we can be able to add pieces of information from our network to be able to give us visibility into the environment. Now, here within our network settings, you'll see that we simply need to be able to have SSH and Telnet login credentials, along with our SNMP read-only community strings. Now, with this information within the environment, we could start with a single seed IP to do our discovery, or even scan an IP range. Either way, we'll be able to take the data that we get from these devices and then be able to create a full topology of the environment. Now, you can see very quickly NetBrain's able to find multiple devices within our environment, between routers, switches, firewalls, load balancers, and end systems. Now, as NetBrain collects this data, it actually starts pulling up configuration file information, data tables such as routing, ARP, MAC, CDP, LLDP, so we can be able to know our layer 2 topology as well. Now, all of this information is getting imported into NetBrain. We're building a data model to be able to understand how your layer 3 and layer 2 topology looks. Now, of course, as we're going ahead and letting this discover, we've already discovered these devices. So let's go ahead and jump into the actual desktop to be able to understand what our topology maps look like, how we can build those, and the type of information we can gather. Now, generally, regardless of the task that you're doing, whether it's a network refresh, network upgrades, doing any kind of troubleshooting analysis, just getting a general baseline of your network, we need to first understand what we have, and then, of course, take a look at the information that we do have. Now, we can start with a single device. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and search for my Boston WAN router. We can easily search for this, and you'll see that we get multiple results popping up in different categories. So you're seeing here that we're looking at our devices, configuration file, interface information, and so on. And when I jump into my device, we'll be able to see details around it. So looking at the actual device details with some minor inventory information, interface data, module information that might be applicable, looking at our configuration as well, where we can be able to get the full configuration file and parse that up so we can be able to see it in a format that makes it easy to just gather the important information. Neighbor discovery table for layer 2 topologies, and of course our routing table, which we can be able to see different algorithms and the actual next hop IPs based on what we have already configured. Now let's go ahead and talk about the actual map itself. We can simply drag and drop directly to the map, and we can be able to view our topology. So from the details that we have available, we can actually start extending our neighbors and being able to see how everything's connected. So I'll start off with my layer 3 map. Then we can work our way down to the layer 2. Now here you can see that we have a handful of devices, and NetBrain is able to not only identify our neighbors, but also show us that we're actually looking at a WAN cloud between our Boston, New York, and LA WANs. As I clear up my map a little bit, we'll see that we actually have routing protocols being shown on the interfaces. So just from the initial mapping of our environment, we can not only get host names and IP addresses, we can be able to understand our logical topologies, our interface information, interface IPs, routing protocols, multicast configurations as well, along with the subnets that each of these interfaces are associated with. We can continue on with our layer 3 topology by picking any one of these devices and starting to create a map. So I can continue with my layer 3 and grow my map organically so I can be able to understand exactly what I have within my network. Now, of course, being able to understand layer 3, we want to also take a look at layer 2 information. And this can be done by using that same process, except in this case, we'll just switch our topologies and then be able to view all the information within the same map. So now as we go through and start mapping our environment, we can be able to see that our layer 2 is giving us details around the actual interfaces themselves, understanding VLAN information, looking at speed and duplex settings, and even the encryption on the interfaces. So So from the details that we have here, you can see that process involving understanding your network topology of a specific LAN is easily understood here. We understand what we have configured. We can hover over any one of these interfaces to see details around it, and then even pin this to the map to be used later. Now let's go ahead and drill down and talk about some of the automation practices that we get. We can essentially be able to create these dynamic maps and be able to understand the information. Now what makes the map so dynamic is that these aren't just simply static images on a map. These can actually be used to add additional information that can come directly from the devices. Now, one of the ways that we do our automation within NetBrain is by doing what's called our instant queue app, or automating our CLI commands. Instead of actively logging into each device individually to retrieve live information, we could do something as simple as issuing our show interface or any of our commands directly into NetBrain. NetBrain has a pre-existing parser library that has the outputs for many of these standard CLI commands already saved. So we've determined a lot of the important information within them, so we can simply drag and drop the information directly to the map. So from my show interface, we can look at collisions, CRC errors, maybe frame errors, input drops, things like that. Really important pieces of information that we want to understand about our links, and have NetBrain be able to retrieve that data automatically. Now NetBrain will initiate a session to be able to CLI into the device, issue the command, get the output, and because of our parser library, it knows exactly what to look for, so it highlights that information automatically on the map. Now, of course, this is all customizable, so we're not completely bound to what's already built into NetBrain. We can customize this further, even adding in our own customized parsers with CLI commands from various vendors. Now, you'll notice that many of the information that I have here, we're all having it in a single color. And one thing that stands out here is that we're viewing this as a one-time data retrieval. Now, of course, we can even edit these to be able to define alerts around them. So any of those values that we have here, if we want to check for a certain threshold, we can define our thresholds here, set an alert, and then, of course, run this as a frequency for every 2 minutes. Let's go ahead and save my map. And now we've effectively turned a single CLI command into an active monitor within NetBrain. Keep in mind, we can not only run these on our maps, but we can save them and reuse them on different maps that match these device types. And on top of that, we can even schedule these even further. Now we can see the details that we have, collisions being highlighted directly on the map, being able to give us our full topology, and be able to see details around our environment. So all of our interfaces are showing us information around this topology. So in a matter of seconds, we can get this level of detail without all the added effort of manual process of not only documenting, but retrieving the data from the devices. Now keep in mind, being able to pull up information based on interfaces is just one of the many ways NetBrain can retrieve information. Another thing we can do is also be able to take a look at how our devices are performing. So one of the important factors of any process, any project, is understanding the health of your devices. So we can understand our interface metrics, but let's go ahead and take a look at the overall health. So some of the top pieces of information we're going to look at is CPU and memory utilization, traffic utilization, errors on the interfaces, and latency. So we can quickly see this information on the map and be able to see that it's getting outlined here. We have our CPU and memory being shown, and other details. Now, as NetBrain is collecting this information, keep in mind that all of the data that we're seeing here isn't just simply data that we're just collecting. We can actually be able to retrieve and review this information repeatedly. So as you can see, we have our overall health monitor that's highlighted. Using our data views, we can bring up information that we've collected periodically, and you can see the details being shown directly on the map. So not only do we have our overall health monitor, but we also have our monitor variables periodically, where we're looking at many of the counters that we have on our interfaces. Now this is just some of the ways we can be able to view the data that's been collected. Our data view can be used to bring up information on the map, so we can be able to understand what we've had. But what we can also do is set these data views as actual templates. Now our data views can use either CLI, SNMP, or even API integration. So now we can be able to pull information not just from the live devices, but also from other applications in the network. So starting with my first data view here that's been scheduled, we're seeing that we have our designs, looking at enabled protocols, EIGRP, and OSPF. Starting here, we can be able to understand our enabled protocols, see EIGRP configured on the devices, see OSPF configured on the devices as well. We can take a look at our EIGRP at a glance and quickly see that we're getting information around EIGRP. We can see it on the device level. Looking at each one of these, we can see our AS numbers. And we we can see the EIGRP networks that we've configured here. So now all the data that I want to get out of my topology is right at my fingertips right through our map. So instead of, again, manually going through this process, all of the data is collected directly through the interface, and you can interface with the devices through the maps. Looking at my OSPF at a glance, we can see our backbone areas being highlighted and our OSPF configuration being shown, along with priority, cost, hello, and dead timers. So information like this can be easily gleaned and be able to be highlighted directly on the map. So again, going through the rest of this, we have generic inventory information, performance baselines on the devices, even being able to look at local access from our security perspective. We can turn this data on and off, and we can be able to see where we have the absence of an enabled password and no usernames. So easily turning this information on gives us the ability to not only document our network, but also being able to give us those red flags where we're ever missing a configuration or missing any issues that we have here. Now, this is just one of the ways we can be able to automate data within NetBrain. We can be able to visualize it by automating CLI commands and even using some built-in monitoring, and even save the data continuously so we can be able to see that. But when we want to be able to take it a step further and possibly standardize the way that we're doing things in our environment, maybe turning everything from maybe some basic documentation via PDFs, maybe it's just some notebooks that we have, and then make sure that we have a standard rule that we can follow, we can be able to leverage what are called runbooks to be able to visualize that. Now I'll go ahead and start up a new map and bring up a new set of devices so we can look at how those runbooks would operate. Now in terms of being able to automate the process of analysis, troubleshooting, and visualization of data, we can start by looking for a group of devices in this case. I'll look for the OSPF 140 process ID in many of my devices, and we can see that we have about 6 of them showing up. We can map these out, and now we have a full topology of this environment. So instead of me having to start from one device, looking at my OSPF neighbors to be able to understand what's connected to what, look at my layer 2 topology, making sure that's accurate via CDP or LLDP, and going through these many steps to be able to verify that my topology is accurate, and running the risk of possibly having outdated topologies by the time I get all the information, we can be able to see those details directly on our maps right off the bat. Now, to be able to drill down and see information around this, we'll be able to leverage those runbooks. Now, you'll notice here that we have a handful of runbooks that we can use to understand what we have in our environment. You'll see that many of these are customized for within NetBrain, so that way we can be able to show many ways that we can be able to see this data. Now, of course, we can be able to take a quick look at just the way a runbook would look in this case, where we have a couple of built-in tools and a couple of customizable tools. Now, from the built-in tools, you'll see we have our overall health monitor and raw data collection, but of course the Q apps that we customize, we have these saved. Now, I'll go ahead and save my map, and we'll be able to go through the rest of these. Now, for the sake of this OSPF example, we'll go ahead and take a look at our general design. Being able to understand our topology that we have here is really important, so that way we can know if we need to make any changes, need to save any configurations, or be able to see where our gaps are within this config. So looking at my OSPF design and stability, I'll go ahead and utilize this runbook. You'll see our runbooks are extremely customizable, not only down to the actual tool that we're using, but also the details that we can add to let our team know exactly what's being done. So you'll notice here that we have our inputs as a Q app or as a Q map. Outputs are looking at ABRs and ASBRs, so the different roles that the routers will take, or the switches will take, areas and information like that using these commands. So starting this up, all 6 devices will be able to give us the information across their topology, so we can be able to see the details of our configuration without me having to log into a single device. So now that our topology has been highlighted, we can see that we have our backbone area here in the dark blue, a normal area for area 1 here in green, going by my device legend. And then, of course, we have an NSSA, right? So we have a stub area that's being shown here. And we can even see some of the details around that. So now we can be able to see our topology and even see where our links have not been established, even getting our full config for OSPF on these devices. So again, NetBrain is making it much faster and much more efficient to be able to get the details out of your environment without having to sacrifice all the additional time it would take to manually collect this data. Now, this is just one aspect of the information. We can see what our topology looks like. What we also want to do is understand the impact of that topology. So by simply running this, we'll be able to see the details that are being collected, and the description, of course, gives us some information about what we're going to be looking at. The number of neighbors, the number of OSPF routes that have been learned, and if our interfaces are flapping in any way. So by viewing these, we can be able to get the information under each device. So we can see the number of interface neighbors, number of flapping neighbors, being able to see the number of routes, and we can even verify that here by taking a look at our route tables. So all of our data tables are directly accessible from our devices, and you can see the information here along with VRFs that will be from this Dropbox. So all of our details are available where we can be able to see the information within the environment, we can highlight this data, and then of course be able to collect additional OSPF information. So now just being able to get a batch of data is completely possible with NetBrain, being able to get a full understanding of all of your outputs already being saved within the maps. Now, of course, this is just one of the ways we can be able to share and save information. Now, for any case of having to do any kind of compliance, any kind of checkups, being able to share this information, there are a few ways we can do that within NetBrain. So far, we talked about how we can be able to create these maps, collect data, but one of the important things is we're not collecting it just for ourselves. We want to be able to share that information. Now, we can be able to use NetBrain's sharing tool here, where we can be able to just simply put in the name of any of the users. In this case, I'll send it to myself. And we can just go ahead and automatically send them a copy of the link, and on top of that, a preview of the map. Now, alternatively, if you have to hand this information off to another party, to another team, we can be able to take a look at this information by leveraging our data views and then highlighting the information that we have. So now we have both layers of data that's being presented on the map. We can easily be able to share this and export this into an actual Visio diagram. So now we have a fully customizable and fully editable Visio diagram that's being shown here. All of our links are being highlighted directly on the map. All the details within these links are being shown. And of course, you even get your device legends that are being shown here as well. So all of this extra work around the side is being done for you automatically. And of course, you're working with a fully customizable and editable Visio diagram. So now when I grab any one of these, we can actually add additional stencils to this if we want to do any kind of enhancements or do any kind of replacements to our devices. All right, so looking at this from a high-level view, being able to understand what our topology looks like. Now let's also understand from a security standpoint. Now, of course, being able to understand how our devices are configured to pass traffic is one thing, but we also may want to prevent traffic, and there's a few ways that we can do that. Now, of course, one of the things we're going to be doing is using CLI and leveraging CLI to understand what we have. So by using our runbooks that have been defined for this, in this case our NIST compliance, we can be able to look for tons of information and even just do general configuration checks right with this tool. So let's go ahead and stop the runbook that we have here and use our NIST compliance and then run this. So now we can be able to check across many devices where we can look at our ACL logs and configurations, make sure that that's actually configured, look at our EIGRP, and in this case, OSPF authentication. So many of the information that you may need to collect can be stored directly within NetBrain's maps, and again, customized based on details you want to see. In this case, we can see that our OSPF authentication is missing on all of these links. So if this was a requirement for us to be able to pass, you can see that we clearly wouldn't be able to do that here. And of course, we can be able to make the proper adjustments and proper changes now that we have the knowledge of what's missing in our environment. We can look at other information like the password encryption, something extremely important. We don't want just anyone being able to see the plain text passwords in our devices, so we can turn this on to be able to also check for this as well. All right. So now as NetBrain's collecting that information, we can be able to see those details directly on the map and highlight this data. Unsafe exec timeouts. All of this information can be collected directly from these as we go down the list while these are running concurrently. So now as NetBrain's highlighting this data, we have it saved directly to the map, which is making it fully shareable. Now, of course, as you're working on these, you can also be able to see who's been working on the map as well. Now, so far we went through a lot of checks. We can always use our data views to bring that information up. But what we can also do is be able to visualize this data within our activity manager. Now, you'll notice here that from showing me as a creator, the actual time when this was run, and being able to see all of the events that have been run on the map. So now I don't have to repeat myself or be able to repeat my documentation of what I have. All this information can be shown directly on the map. So now, after looking at our compliance, making sure that our devices are configured appropriately, seeing where our gaps are in our configuration so we can remediate those, let's go ahead and take a look at how we can deal with traffic flowing within the network. Now, of course, one of the major gaps with any analysis is when you have to deal with routing, dealing with asymmetric routes, dealing with any kind of routing loops that may be taking place in the network, or just ensuring that the traffic is going where it's supposed to be going and not diverting somewhere else. We can be able to use NetBrain's A to B path to be able to view that. So we can simply take an example of a web server talking to a database server, very common. Once we have this information highlighted, we can now be able to define how we want our path to run, whether we want to run a layer 3 path, a layer 2 path, if we want to use a live network, or if we even want to test specific protocols like TCP ports and so on. Running this path, NetBrain is going to actively log into the devices to retrieve the live data. So we're going to be looking at ACLs, policy-based routes, MPLS, LFIVs, VPN peers, and so on. So now as NetBrain's going through this process, it's taking all of that analytical work off of our hands and now being done automatically. So now you can see where many of the limitations of traceroute would come in this picture, which is generally the go-to when it comes to being able to test traffic flow. So now we can see that NetBrain's not only giving me the actual devices and IP addresses, but it's also showing me my ingress and egress ports as well. And also doing something that traceroute wouldn't be able to give us, which is being able to see routing loops within the environment or asymmetric routes. Now you can see NetBrain is showing us that using our live data, we have an asymmetric route running in the network. Now, this may be something done intentionally, but generally these are issues that may pop up out of other reasons. Looking at my path, I can actually be able to see the log of all the events that have taken place. So again, looking through all of these thorough checks, we can know that NetBrain was able to identify an accurate flow of our traffic based on our configurations. Let's go ahead and dig a little bit deeper to understand what we have. Seeing the information that we have going through this path, we can be able to change the data that we're using. So in this case, instead of using my live network, I can use historic data, and I can use my last week baseline. Now, to kind of give a little bit of backstory behind the baseline, essentially NetBrain has what's called our benchmarks. Now, our benchmarks are able to take periodic snapshots. Generally, we refer to do them every 24 hours. But we can take snapshots of the network to be able to view any changes or any events that have taken place. So now, since we have all of our routing tables and data tables, I can simply use a previous piece of cache data to be able to check my path to see how the flow looks. So now you can see here from the previous dotted lines that we used to look at the live network, we're looking at an asymmetric route. However, when we look at the solid line showing us our last week, we're seeing that we have a solid path, or we're seeing that we have a symmetric route. So the quick way to understand where the changes may have come from is by doing a quick comparison between the different data sets that we have. So now that we can easily look back in time and do a quick comparison, we can grab that last week benchmark, search for the available data, look at config files, route tables, whatever information we need to look at to understand and be able to see the details around it. Now, one thing to point out, our issue is probably somewhere between these two devices, looking at our LA core and our boss core. So understanding where we have these, we can start with our LA core 1 demo and jump through each step. So you'll see all the changes that come here regarding the actual config, but this doesn't show me anything regarding routing. We can look at our route tables and see this information as well and understand what we have. So if we need to understand where the gaps are in our configurations before making any changes, adding new devices, updating them, the last thing we want to do is be able to bring in new devices with old configs that could be problematic. So here we can be able to see those and vet those out prior to putting those on the new devices. So here with our current baseline, we can see static routes that have been established, destination addresses, masks, and of course our next hop IP has been changed. So it's not even a completely different IP in the same range, these are two completely different networks. So by being able to identify this quickly, we can be able to easily find where these gaps are, apply notes to the map, and then be able to share this with our team who's going to be responsible for fixing this. Now, of course, being able to map a flow of traffic between two devices is one thing, but we may need to be able to do it multiple times. Now, here's where our path tool can be used to be able to run simultaneously. We can actually save the paths that we have, or even add new paths or import them via CSV files. So now it makes it very easy for us to be able to populate this information and have these all run simultaneously. Now, of course, when you're testing your paths or testing traffic flow, you don't only need to test how the traffic gets from one end to another, but you may need to test ACLs. You might need to test any kind of port blocking or anything along those lines. Here's where we can take an example of one of our devices that we want to make sure that we can check against, and then automatically populate this information with the path calculation bar. Now, we could be able to have this run automatically and have this run in the background, but I want you to see that NetBrain is able to sniff out different pieces of information from the devices to understand where the change is or understand how traffic is supposed to be blocked or allowed. Now, you're noticing here that we have two IP addresses, and of course, we have a TCP port of 8080. We can look at our live network and actually be able to see what's happening in our lab as this traffic tries to go from one end to another. So now, starting from my server, we can be able to see the traffic flow. And now we can immediately see that we actually have an ACL deny. So we have an ACL that's denying port 8080. So we can confirm that we are having this blocked port and either make the change or just let them know, well, this is supposed to be blocked for a reason. You're not able to get through to the network based on the actual TCP port you're using. So easily being able to show this information on the map, you can basically take the network out of the problem or be able to show the network is working properly as expected. So many of the examples that we went through here was to be able to understand our topologies, how we can troubleshoot, how we can analyze the network without having to get our hands too dirty on the devices themselves. We can let NetBrain do a lot of the heavy lifting and then give us the results to be able to make the changes. However, we can also take a look at other views in the environment. We can take a look here at our sites where we can be able to view the full topology of our network. So being able to jump in and be able to see a solid overview map of our network allows us to be able to see where all of our sites are located and then easily be able to jump through any one of those. So going here, we can be able to take a look at our sites, search for any locations. In this case, I'll look for my Boston data center and search for those here. NetBrain is going to find it within this list and then allow me to be able to map this out. So when I open my site map, I have my full topology here that's already been collected for me and already updating. So now from the details that I have, I can start viewing any information from my data views that I've saved. And again, coming right down into the port level, we can be able to see the information that's being shown here and then be able to save that information to the map. Now, of course, for many operations teams, this is one way that we can look at the data, but they may need to see something a little faster, maybe something a little bit more concise. So here's where we can be able to view that information here within our dashboards. Now, our dashboards are a way that we can customize the information and change the way we can view the data. Here I can go ahead and open one up that we already have saved. And you'll see that we not only have a topology, but some device inventory, or device information. What we can also see is that we have CPU and memory charts in both a chart and graph form. So now anytime we need to see this information, it's immediately highlighted, and we can see that. Now, of course, as you're working on any of these networks, any of these sites, any of these topologies, you may want to round up your full documentation with the final report of everything that you've done. Here's where NetBrain allows you to export the information to Word documents. And here I have an example of that. From our site performance, you can be able to see that we have a table of contents that's fully hyperlinked, where we can jump into each one, looking at our map widget, being able to see device details, and all the information exported into various documents. In this case, we're looking at Excel sheets, CSV files, and so on, and all the data from that environment being saved. So this was just a good view or a high-level view of how NetBrain is able to view the information within your network, how you can understand what you have within your topologies, and then, of course, be able to document that information as you go through. But so far, we talked about the mapping, documentation, troubleshooting, and analysis. But what we also want to do is talk about the integration with third-party applications. Now, with NetBrain's RESTful API, we can see we can use our example of ServiceNow, a very common ticketing platform, to be able to help us integrate these two applications together and speed up the workflow. Now, traditionally, if an event takes place, it shows up here in your ticketing system, in which you'll jump into your incidents and then be able to see the events that are taking place. We can be able to take the security alert, for instance, where we have a high amount of ICMP traffic going from one source to a destination, and highlight this information. Now, essentially what's taking place here is when this ticket opens up, ServiceNow does an API call to NetBrain, in which it populates NetBrain with the information that it needs, a source and destination IP. NetBrain then takes over and creates a dynamic map of that environment, creating that path, and then automatically triggering a runbook to be able to highlight that information. So now we can see the details that we have here. We can highlight the information and then show the results that are being shown on the map. We can be able to look where we can analyze the traffic flow and so on, be able to see net flow information, and then be able to visualize these details and check for hardware vulnerabilities and so on. So anytime an event takes place in the network, we can easily highlight those results, be able to give a detailed analysis and a trigger diagnosis based on the information we have. But that's pretty much covering what we have for our demonstration, showing you the kind of the three tiers that we have of the mapping and documentation, troubleshooting and analysis with automation, and of course our API integration with third-party tools. So I'll go ahead and hand things back to Nathan. Again, thank you everyone for taking a look at this. And I'll go ahead and pass the ball.
That's fantastic. We've got just a few minutes left on the call here, and I'm going to open it up now to everyone on the call for questions. We have a few in queue, but we'll take any live questions that you may have first. All right. Now, so Lisa, can you unmute everyone? Maybe that's part of the problem. All right. So I don't see that everyone's unmuted yet. Oh, it looks like, oh, here they come. Here they come. Anyone out there have any questions before I'll get into some of these that are queued up from the call?
This is Bill Luisi from Dallas.
Hi, Bill.
Hey, I'm just curious, how effective, if at all, is this in working within the private networks we set up for our systems when we're not allowed to be on the corporate network?
Yeah.
That's a great question. Is that maybe for Joel?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer that. So if you're not allowed on the corporate network or allowed on other networks outside, what you have the ability to do is either set up a proxy server within the environment that will still need some level of connectivity to the network, or you would be able to work with other versions of NetBrain that will be able to work in a sort of a consultative role. So you'd be able to check nodes out of the environment, be able to take it to that location, do all of the work that you've seen here with the analysis and so on, and be able to have that data saved. So that way you don't have to worry about a dedicated connection to the environment or running the risk of that in that case.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, I think that seems beneficial because we're always challenged, when we're setting up a system, of being apart because they don't want the AV to be on the network per se. So,
right.
So this gives us a chance to be able to sniff out the problems and be able to identify loads and peaks and how it might be, what might be going on within that environment. So that's good
right.
to know.
Great.
Other questions out there? One that we had queued up here came in. So, interested in test driving NetBrain. Is there a proof of concept process or anything that we can implement? Maybe Rick, I'll throw that over to you.
Sure, absolutely. There's a couple of different ways that you can get your hands on the product to give it a test drive, so to speak. One is you can download a copy of our Instant Trial Edition today. It will give you access. You'll get full functionality of NetBrain. However, you will be accessing our lab here in Burlington, Massachusetts. You can't run that particular piece of software on your own network, but it will give you an opportunity to start playing with the tool and seeing what it's capable of. Certainly proof of concepts are common here. We would, after having an initial meeting, providing you with a personalized demo and learning more about your organization or your department's specific environment, we could definitely arrange a proof of concept for several weeks. One of the engineers, Joel, or whoever the appropriate SC would be for that particular organization would be a very active participant in terms of helping you get it installed and have regular meetings to address questions, making sure everything is running properly. But absolutely, we do that quite common.
Great. Second question here, does NetBrain address the modernizing government technology mandate? Zach, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I will try and answer that one. So whomever asked that, I know this was specifically directed at the VA, but there was a MGTA, or Modernizing Government Technology Act, signed in by our president. And over the next 2 fiscal years in the federal government, I think there are $500 million worth of working capital funds out there for IT modernization efforts. And we actually do have a template where we can help you fill it out. Whether you're a federal or enterprise customer, I think it transcends. But we can help you fill it out. NetBrain addresses all of this. And if you are one of those customers that has working capital funds, I think this is right up your alley to help with the Modernizing Government Technology Act.
Third question out here, and then that kind of maybe even bleeds into it a little bit, Zach. So how is NetBrain priced? Maybe the question of the hour. Rick, you want to talk about that?
Sure. Obviously, it's a concern for everybody, no question about it. One of the things that we hear from our customers is that the quotes are very easy to understand. There's not a lot of line items involved. There's the number of users. A user license, it's a floating license. It's a concurrent floating license. So anybody that's authorized within your organization to access NetBrain can access the license. If you have 6 people that are authorized to use NetBrain and you have 5 licenses, the first 5 people who log in have access. The 6th person will get an error message saying you've either got to wait or contact NetBrain for more licenses, whatever the verbiage is. But they are floating concurrent licenses, and they list price, and of course we're not talking a list ever, but just as a point of reference, the list price per license is $12,000. Then the next line item would be the number of nodes that are going to be in your network environment. And to NetBrain, a node is considered an L2 or an L3 router or switch, a WAN optimizer, a load balancer, a wireless access point, or a firewall. And then you have maintenance, which is 20% of the total sale, which is renewable every year. You can take out multi-year maintenance packages, of course, and save yourself a little bit of money on the long run. And that's really it. We do provide a user training and administrator training that are part of the initial sale. And one of the nice things we do, we get a lot of compliments on this, is you can get unlimited training from NetBrain at no charge over the internet. We provide live web-based classes on a variety of subjects, which you don't even really need to be a NetBrain customer to start taking advantage of. There's a schedule right on our website right now. You could start taking them tomorrow if you so chose, and you can take them as many times as you want. They're also recorded so that you can look at them at your own convenience. If the class times are not convenient for you, obviously you just give up the ability to ask live questions of the instructor. But that's really it. There are no other costs involved with NetBrain.
Kind of a follow-on question to that is NetBrain available as a service?
Not yet. Well, Joel, what do you? We do have some. Go ahead, please.
Rick, let me take that one. Yeah, if you don't mind.
No. That's it.
Yeah, so one of the things that was addressed in the VA Modernization Plan, the Modernizing Government Technology Act, as well as in the private and commercial sector, is the ability to take IT infrastructure or purchases like this, which are typically a capital expenditure, and you don't realize the value too much later. Now, with NetBrain, it's easier because it's just software you're putting on your network, but one of the mandates in there was anything that you could flip to an OpEx expense, meaning like a recurring monthly charge, think of a utility almost. Diversified does have the ability, if you don't want to buy NetBrain and put it on your network, let's say you want to do a quarterly network mapping infrastructure check, we can go out with our engineering staff on the ITS team and utilize a NetBrain as a service model where we come in and do all this for you. Now, you're not going to get the benefits of running it on your network all the time, but if you're just trying to get dynamic network mapping and a baseline, Diversified can come in and do that for you.
Thank you, Zach. That's actually what I was about to say. Is there are organizations like Diversified that can provide NetBrain services without actually being a NetBrain customer. You'd go through, an organization like Diversified. And also, just something I should follow up on in terms of the pricing is we are on the GSA schedule. So a federal entity, obviously, that's interested in making a purchase and wanted to buy directly from us, we could actually still incorporate that through Diversified and still give you advantage, let you take advantage of the GSA schedule pricing.
That's fantastic. And, so just as we wrap up here, I want to say thank you to all of the attendees, your attention to the presentation and the time that you've taken to join us today. We really appreciate you being here. And I'll also say thank you to our panelists, Rick and Joel from NetBrain. Thank you for framing this up and showing the demo of a very powerful tool. And Zach, thank you as well for providing and representing Diversified in this manner. So next week, I'll remind everyone that we have part 2 of our 4-part series. The topic next week is cloud data management. We'll be joined by guest partner Rubric to discuss things around the cloud data management and capabilities that are out there. If you have any questions, I'll leave this slide up here for a moment. Please feel free to reach out to Zach Duncan with his email there, and or Brooke as well, Federal Account Executive up in D.C. So thanks again to everyone for your participation.
Thank you. Thank you very much for setting this up. We appreciate it. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.